With this, we'll move to the last session of the day. We have some very interesting speakers who would reflect on what we've learned through the day and also give us some thoughts on what could we do immediately in the near term, but also what's the longer term agenda for us. So I'd like to invite Paola Tapia, the former Minister of Transport and Telecommunications in Chile. Please, onto the stage. Christine Lintz from the Global Women's Network for Energy Transition. Thank you. May Ali Babiker, she is from the Women and Youth Empowerment Division of the Islamic Development Bank.
You can follow Claudia's not coming, she had a flight problem.
Okay. We also have Kristina Kebeck from GIZ. She is an advisor on Sustainable Mobility Project. Kristina. Sheila Watson, she's the Deputy Director at the FIA Foundation. And she's also the representative of the Sum for All Gender Working Group. We also had Claudia Adriazola-Steil from the Urban Mobility, from the World Resources Center. However, she could not make it because of flight issues. So we have 5 very interesting speakers who've been doing great work in their own right. And so I'll start with, actually, Paola. Paola, can you please share us, and this has been one of the most interesting conferences I've ever been, not just a gender conference I've ever been at. And so it's been a privilege for me to be moderating this session. Could you please tell us what you saw or what you learned from the proceedings during the day today?
Okay, thanks. Hi, I hope you are very well. The first is, I have 2 children, and Sofia, thanks for sharing your history for us. It's very important for the present, for the future, very emotions. Today is an important day for us because we are women, because we work hard to incorporate women into transport. Thanks to GIC and to me for the organization, this conference, excellent organizations. Thanks Verena and all group. Is a beautiful, beautiful group, and thanks a lot for all. I am Paola Tapia. I am lawyer. I am working for 15 years in the Minister of Transport in my country, in different roles, in aviation transport, in public transport, and rail transport, and administration of a state company. One day, the president of Chile, my president, asking me to be a minister. Surprise for me, a surprise for family. And I was the first woman minister in my country, and in Chile, in South America. I think it's interesting to share to experience and ideas that we implement without forgetting relevant aspects, like, for example, that we did not have a nursing room. Do you know, for the woman, a special room in the minister? Today, there is room. The woman there is room. During my time as ministers, we had 2 main goals relating to women and transport. We want to improve public transport to make it safer, more accessible, and more relevant for women. And second, to promote the role of women in the business of transport. We create the first roundtable conversation and actions between a transport company and government, help create more opportunities for women in transport. For example, the President established the obligation that 40% of the top positions of public companies were occupied by women. We take actions to increase the number of women in the drivers in the public transport, and very important, we wrote and approved the first public policy of gender and transport equality, because must continue the work day by day, and together we can. And the change is now with short and long-term projects. For example, the group of women for Iberoamerica, that we will start now, and to which we hope to add other women. Yes, we women can. Together, we can. Similar Obama.
Christine, may I ask you to have your reflections from the conference first, and then we have a second round, actually, where I'd like to ask you also about what you think are the short-term and the long-term wins that we can have, looking at it from your own organization and your professional perspective.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's absolutely great to have a mixed audience here, despite the fact that there are lots of women, which is great. Normally, at least in energy conferences, it's always the other way around. I have been working in the field of energy for my entire career, for the last 25 years, on sustainable energy, meaning renewable energy and energy efficiency. And what we clearly see, at least in the energy world, we talk more and more about sector coupling, about coupling of electricity, transport and heating sector. And I think this is definitely something that we need to focus more in the future. And I think it's great to bring these communities somehow together. Of course, when you look at energy, the situation is very much so that it is a male-dominated sector. We have a situation that in the energy sector, roughly 29% of the workforce are women. In sustainable energy, it's about, according to IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, 35%. But there is still a long, long way to go to really harvest the potential of women in this space, which I think, and you see that really in this room, which is abundant and which is really contagious, I would say. When I hear facts that in the Indian railways, transporting the entire world population in 1 year, 8 billion people, and when I hear that there are only 7.6% of women in the workforce, I can see that the situation of women in transport is a very similar, if not worse one, than in the energy sector. And I think this is something, especially the many of us here in this room are convinced that needs to be changed. So with this, and with this experience, a year ago, I have co-founded the Global Women's Network for the Energy Transition. It's an international NGO focusing on empowering women in these as actors of change, as agents of change in the energy transition. And I think this is something, and maybe this conference could be a starting point for something similar in the transport sector, because I think what we need to do is to bring people together. I think we need to work on data. It was mentioned several times that very often the data on women in different sectors is missing. We need to work on policy. Paola has presented the first public policy on gender and transport in Chile. A very good example, I think, with the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 5, governments are more and more obliged to focus on mainstreaming gender aspects in different areas, and we are working definitely on the energy side of linking SDG 5 and SDG 7. We are also working on empowering women in that space. We have just launched a couple of months ago the first global mentoring program in the energy field for mid-career women to really help them advance in their career. And I think that could also be something which could be an interesting possibility for the transport sector. We are also, and I think this is very important, that we have gatherings like today where women can establish networks among their peers. But I think it's also very important that we have men in the room, like we have here today. Those are the real champions, because I think it needs both men and women to empower gender balance in the different sectors. And last but not least, we are also working on a database of women experts in the energy sector, because I've been going to conferences all around the place, and very often I was the only woman on the panel, and I've always been told there are no other women, and this is not true. You might have to look a bit closer to find them, but they are absolutely out there. Just look around you and you see the fabulous talent that is out there in this space. So I think there is room for collaboration between energy and gender, and there are lots of, between energy and transport on gender aspects, as there are lots of synergies, and I'm absolutely convinced that more women in this space will make both the energy and the transport sector more sustainable.
Thank you. Thank you. May I call on May Ali Babiker to speak about how you're bringing about change, first your reflections on the day, but also how you're bringing about change through the Islamic Development Bank, and what you see as short-term wins, but also longer-term horizon.
Okay, so 2 in 1.
It looks like everybody's speaking in one go, so you might as well just go at it, and we'll see if we have some time at the end, but...
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, thank you. First of all, I'm really happy to be part of this conference, the first of its kind, and we look forward for more to come. Yes, maybe I just introduce a bit the Islamic Development Bank for many people that they might not know. So it's a South-South multilateral development bank covering 57 member countries in 4 continents. And also it covers also Muslim communities in non-member countries, so almost the whole world. So this is who we are. We work with a mission on human dignity and prosperity. And the vehicles for that are human development, so education, health, and we also invest in transport, a lot of transport projects, energy projects, and so on and so forth. So for the transport sector, which is one of the major sectors that the bank invests in, we do rural roads and feeder roads. We do also urban. So the discussion today was mainly about urban roads, but we also do the rural part of it, which comes with economic opportunities, access to markets for women and also for rural people, rural communities. We also do road corridors, so cross-border trade, which brings the whole element of violence against women at a different level, where we talk about cross-border traders. From my previous life working for the African Development Bank, I have also been involved in this part of engendering transport, working with countries in engendering transport policies, and also working in engendering the project of transport sector. So with that in mind, the discussion and the role of the multilateral development banks in this is very important. Through at least our role when it comes to projects that we engender the projects, we make sure that it addresses the needs of men and women. So when we are building a road, we need to make sure that the road safety and the issues of integration of women in terms of economic opportunities, that they are going to benefit from it. So the discussion we had today fall within what we were talking about as our role as MDBs, but the main thing I would say, it comes with partnership, that nobody can do it alone. It's all of us. It's civil society, it's the governments, it's the private sector, it's multilateral development banks. And I think each one of us spoke from our own perspective, but we're all talking about the same, and we cannot do it alone. And we have to partner also with men. So partnership at levels of institutions, but also partnership at level of individuals. So men and women are partners on this. and mainly we need to have something like a role model when it comes to women and when it comes to men champions. So that would be one of my takeaways of this conference. The other thing is the importance of women being part of planning our transport, as everybody was talking about, that when you have men planning the transport, then it is transport for men. So I like one of the colleagues said about transport for society. So when you involve women, then you have the transport that is planned for everybody. One last thing would be about the women who are the embracers of change. One of the ex-minister talked about it, and I think that was one of my also takeaways, that women are agents of change, and it starts with us. It starts with us even for the long term, and that brings me to the next point. In the long term, we are the ones who are socializing men, whether we like it or not, despite of the different roles that we are playing. We are the ones who are bringing up those men who are doing this discrimination against us. So it starts with us, that we should do justice to us by, if we are still socializing our kids, then we have to socialize them differently, and we have to use the different means of socialization, so be it the education institutions, media, everybody. That is the starting point for the long term. The other one that comes to my mind with the long term is having a tailored approach. So each of the countries has completely different needs, completely different cultures. When it comes to using bikes, in some communities, is completely forbidden. In the countries I'm covering, I have countries that women are going to start to drive. So we are at completely different spectrums when it comes to the countries we are covering. When we talk about a fragile state or a country that is rising from conflict, like Liberia, like my country, Sudan. So it is a tailored approach that has to be accustomed to the different contexts. I think the quick win we have, and I will finish with that, is the Me Too. That we have this momentum now. Everybody is talking about the importance of safety and security of women, the importance of ending sexual harassment. So this is one of the quick wins that we should really capitalize on, the work on road safety, security, and ending sexual harassment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Kristina from GIZ. And even though I've been the face of this event, in reality, it's Kristina and Verena and Amin, the whole team at GIZ, which has been behind creating such a wonderful conference. So first of all, I'd like all of you to congratulate GIZ on that.
Thank you.
And Kristina, your thoughts? Like, what did you expect when this whole thing started? And
Well,
what has your learning been?
What did we expect? Well, we hoped to reach something half as big as it turned out, I think. So we had something in our mind when we started planning this conference, but it all turned out to be much better than we ever thought. And we tried to make it in a way that it's different to all other conferences. We didn't want to have PowerPoint presentations the entire day. And this really, I think, is also my main takeaway of today, that there is a kind of spirit in this room with all these personal stories, and it was always the person here with his personal experiences letting us participate and telling their personal view of how a women's world looks like, especially regarding to transport and mobility. So really, I'm glad that it all turned out the way it did, and I thank you so much that you all came here and participated and showed interest. And yes, so that's the quick win, I'd say. It's this spirit. And if we would have another kind of conference or whatsoever, I would take away the versus, I think. It doesn't have to be quick wins versus structural change. I think that we need to have some quick wins in order to reach a structural change in the long term. And I think that this is also something that GIZ is working for. We are active in many different countries, as you've heard, and also in many different sectors like energy or agriculture or water and sanitation, and of course also in transport. And we do information campaigns, we raise awareness, we build capacity in administration and governance, and We conduct webinars, we have information material. We freshly released and published our newest publication, thanks to Heather over there too, which is a new gender source book, Sustainable Transport, a source book for policymakers in developing cities with the title of Approaches for Gender Responsive Urban Mobility. You all got a copy of it already in your bags of today, and all this and much more material can be found at our SUTP homepage, which is like a rich library of source books for sustainable mobility, many different aspects of it. So this is something which GIZ will also do in future time, go on with conferences like this and try and help produce more material, information material, and so on. Of course, as GIZ, we are a proud partner of TUMI, can you see here? And we are proud to take part with transforming urban mobility by this initiative. And yes, I think that we will take the spirit of today as our quick win, and of course make sure that we take it over into our future activities and hopefully lead to a structural change.
Thank you. Thank you. And finally, Sheila, you've been doing some great work, the foundation, VIA Foundation. So please share your thoughts on the day and the future.
Thank you very much. So I should say, FIA Foundation, super quickly, UK-based charity, completely independent charity. We focus on safe and sustainable mobility. We do a great deal of work on road safety, and I would very much like to make contact with you later, Sophia, to see whether there's anything that we can do to support your work. And in the role of Deputy Director of FIA Foundation, I am also part of the Sustainable Mobility for All initiative, which I think I'm representing on the stage here today. They've just had a big meeting next door. They're an initiative of the World Bank. We're an initiative of the World Bank, I should say. A really good initiative which is trying to draw together the transport community around some core themes. They're very familiar themes: efficiency, safety, access, and green. And after a little bit of wrangling and pushing and shoving and arguing our corner, we have a rural theme coming out of those four, and also a gender theme. So we've been pushing hard on these issues in that setting. And my first takeaway, therefore, because I chair that, or co-chair that gender group, is a big thank you to you all, because if we had tried as a group to set up a workshop for gathering amazing practice, making wonderful contacts, and enough evidence to write our chapter and make our contribution to the report that will come from this Sustainable Mobility for All initiative, then we'd have got all of you together in a room. And today has been absolutely invaluable, totally inspirational, and I think many of you can expect to follow up from the team at Some for All just to hear more about the incredible work that you're all doing and the way that it substantiates the clear necessity for issues around gender to be taken very seriously as we look forward on the issue of sustainable mobility. And that's sort of my second takeaway, because I think repeatedly today people have talked about things, be they incredibly local or obviously very global, which are really ways of saying, I think, that we will never have the sustainable mobility we all know we need to save our planet, to give us all, in equal measure, not just the rich north, but everybody else, the prosperity that we all want to have, unless we address the issues that we're raising around gender in transport. If we don't sort that out, we won't get sustainable mobility. If we don't get sustainable mobility, given its connection to energy and the issues around climate, then we're in serious trouble. So we're a really important part of this big mission, and that's my second takeaway. And then thirdly, however, I think our prospects are great. I think there's a wonderful network. Someone earlier said that you all look great. Well, after listening to you for a day, you will sound great too. And that network is something that we should build on. We mustn't let this moment go. We mustn't let this energy go that GIZ has sort of created and brought together here, and which was evident at Transforming Transportation. And I think that that must power us onwards as we support each other in the work that we're doing.
Excellent. Thank you. Any closing thoughts that any one of you would like, or on the day? Or is there anyone from the audience who would like any closing thoughts? Anyone? Please.
Hi, Bronwyn Thornton, Walk 21. As one of those people who's sat on more panels than she can count as the token woman, and even to the extent where a colleague rang up and said, "You're meant to be on stage now." I said, "You do it, you can say the same things I can say." They said, "No, they need you, because you're the woman and the gender balance is out." I want to thank Tumi and I want to thank this group, because I think the feeling that actually, you know what, you can run an entire day talking transport and have only women speakers. And I reckon we could run 3 days talking about transport with only women speakers. And it's been absolutely inspirational. No more tokens. Thank you, Tumi.
So, yep, please.
Yeah, there was a question there before about feminism, and I was at that moment I wanted to reply, and just because we were talking about this already the whole day, I guess, just wanted to make a comment that I guess feminism is also very diverse, and this is what we are representing here at this conference, because when somebody is asked, like, if you are feminist, it's kind of... Some of people even, like, you know, feel offended when you're saying you are a feminist, because at the end the understandings of feminism are very different. There are different theories of that. And one of these, I guess, what I've heard sometimes, there are people, or like women, they have very different perspectives of life, and we should accept that. And some of the feminism theories, they are very maybe exaggerating or something, and some of them less exaggerating, and that's what I think we are, all these women here from very different countries, from very different backgrounds, cultures, and accepting us and inspiring us, each other. This is what we are, and that's why maybe again this phrase was coming up again, that women planning transport are planning transport for all, for the society. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Gotelind Alba. I work with Gender CC, Women for Climate Justice. And I have been thinking about starting a global network on gender and transport, on gender and mobility for quite a while. And now being here today, I think the time is right. So whoever is interested in this initiative, please contact me. So I don't think I think there is a lot of initiatives around, but I don't have the feeling it would duplicate anything that is already going on, since what the focus would be to make all the knowledge and the contacts and the findings and the approaches available to women on the ground. And so we work already with women's organizations around the world, and would provide some kind of a platform to link them up with the experts, with the various initiatives that support whatever, cycling, walking, that support urban, sustainable urban transport policy, gender responsive transport policy, and so forth. So please contact me if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gladys. I'm from Green Africa Foundation in Kenya. And one of the things I really appreciate being in this conference is all the different, we are told women are very emotional, but all the different emotions, from feeling, yes, we can do this, from the tears, from the happiness of seeing what other women are doing with the Miss Taxi. And I feel that this is the reason why women are driving change, because we are sensitive, but we are also strong and very resilient and aggressive towards seeing this is a gap and we can make a change. So this conference has served to give me that fire to go back home and do what it is I've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you for this wonderful panel. I'm going to go back to the title of this panel in saying that, what do you think are the barriers that actually not prohibit, but impede quick wins from becoming structural changes? I think for many of us who are working, either with government or etc., we think that there is a challenge that a pilot or a quick win may not always translate into something that is embedded within institutions. And so what do you think are those barriers, and how can we address these then?
Anyone who from the panel would like to do that? I had the question anyway listed, but thanks, Sonal, for asking.
So I suppose I think I'm quite old now, and I've been around, I am genuinely really very old. I'll feel older at the end of ITF at Leipzig, that's for sure. And I kind of feel like sometimes we're our own barrier. I mean, there's something entirely liberating about that whole Me Too thing. And it was a moment that we just can't let go of. And already I was reading stuff about, the Cannes Film Festival, and they were saying, oh, it's all getting a little old hat now, and nobody was really wearing the badge anymore. So it's kind of gone. And I think that's the real challenge for us. We just get hold and we don't let go. And that is our challenge. We have to step up to it. And we have to support each other doing it. Us oldies, and women who are joining the sector and across as many places as we can, is my thought.
Well, I totally agree to what you said, and I think that we can only overcome the barriers if we exchange our knowledge, and if we just make it open, publish it, let others learn from our experiences, what went well and also what didn't work well. And I think this conference format is one way of doing this, but of course also publications and going public, having some, digital tools helping or whatsoever. So there are many ways, and I just think we need to come to implementation, and that's something that we should focus on. So let this just be the starting point for some kind of, a second edition of conference or for a network of like-minded, but make sure that we will come to implementation and help to address gender-responsive transport all over the world.
Maybe it's very important we don't forget this meeting. For return with as country, it's very important continue communication about the good practice and other public policies, and it's very important work not only urban mobilize, it's the rural mobilize. It's good important because the difference is different, the country is different, and maybe when we work together, it's more easy. The change, in the future, is now. It's very important. The change is now. For example, in my country, the student is reclaiming for rights. It's very important. Speak very, very high and listen with us.
Well, I think in addition to all what they have said, I agree with it. I think we should not give up. I think that was the message that was repeated in all of the presentation, that you face barriers, but you should not give up. You should always be persistent about what you want to do and try new ways, try innovative ways. Think out of the box, but don't give up.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think it's important to share stories and to share best practices, because many of you have said that the energy in this room inspires you to continue your work at home, and I think that's something, it's like a a motivational boost, and now we go all back and change things in our sphere of activity and really try to bring this change.
Thank you. So maybe I think it's time for us to wrap up. Okay, last. Sorry. Yes.
I can't thank you enough, so I'm not going to repeat that. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate this. And I've been to a lot of conferences. I've never seen such global representativity in my entire life. Thank you for that. But I just want to give all of us some takeaways or homework, rather. Please go and look at the Sustainable Development Goals. Eradication of poverty, eradication of inequality, and then try and find a goal on public transport, which is an enabler. If you do find it, let me know, because I've been searching and I have not been successful. The second thing is, Sophia, from the bottom of my heart, honestly, but you got me thinking about the UN Decade of Action on Safety. It's less than 2 years to go. It's got 2020 targets. And I really cannot tell you whether we're making strides, or I can't tell you what has been achieved between 2010 and 2020. That's something we need to go back and think about. It's really nice to have these conversations, but we need to move the needle.
So with that, I think I should start wrapping up the session. We have another very important program right after this. So here are some of my takeaways. No surprises, but I think these are important. So the first is, I think, we often think that there are lots of differences between, what applies in Latin America or Africa or Asia, but I think there's more in common between us than there's different. And so let's not forget that. So let's learn from each other and let's apply it, because the world truly is a single place in many senses. And a woman in Bolivia or Chile or a woman in India is facing very similar issues when it comes to mobility or just life. So let's make sure that we do that. I think also, while I wouldn't say definitively, but I think most of who we are in this room are from relatively privileged backgrounds. And so let's not forget and not make this only about privilege, but also make sure that we are making life better for women who are not so privileged out there. It's on us to make sure that that happens. Also, share your story. Share your story and be an inspiration. I loved what Ms. Taxigana said, be a virus, be a good one, but inspire other women to make that change. Also, oftentimes we wait for opportunities, but let's not wait for opportunities. Let's jump at opportunities. Let's create opportunities. We really need to do that. And also not just create opportunities for you to do something, create opportunities for other women to do something. I think that's on us to make sure that that happens and inspire other women. I do have some thoughts on the whole issue of, quick wins versus structural, because I think somewhere we get lost with quick wins. It's nice, the pilots are nice, but at the end of the day, we are, pilots have almost become, not just in this sector, I think pilots have become somewhat of a tokenism, where you show something, a small little change happens. I know, not specifically with this, but let's also talk about gender. I know of examples where safety alarms put up in a bus have not been used at all, or have been, and yet they're being promoted as best practices in some senses. I don't know, how exactly you use that information, or in a completely different side, for example, on cycle sharing, and that's something that we actively work on ITDP. We work on cycle sharing, and there are cities which have put up 10 cycles at a single station and calling it a cycle sharing system, and that's not quite cycle sharing, and that's not what pilots are meant to be. You really need to show change happen and make that structural. So we also need to make sure that these get embedded into into our policies, into our finance schemes, but also in the way we start hiring in our organizations, within our organizations to start with, and then externally as we'll push for there being more women in public agencies and there being more women in politics. So that's how we can bring about that change to happen. So at the end of the day, I would just like to say, a city that's of the women, for the women, by the women is a great city for all. So let's make that happen. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So closing notes.